Let's talk a little bit about you and how you got into diving. I believe you're quite young when you got the bug.
I was. I clearly remember that. We all had these iconic moments in our lives, and they can be from one thing to the other. And for me, it was 11. And I can still feel it watching television. You know, my life's heroes were in their prime. You know, Jacques Cousteau was living on Calypso with his men, world's ultimate diving adventures, you know. He'd already lived under the Red Sea in Conchel 2, and it was a beautiful thing. I would watch that any time it came on. You know, the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. We can all hear the music now as we think about it, can't we? And then, of course, Hans Haas was making those fantastic black and white shark documentaries. They were just beautiful. I didn't know anything about ex-military rebreathers at the time, but that's what he was using. And the images were just fabulous, powerful, black and white sharks. And for me, shortly thereafter, was Sea Hunt, Mike Nelson.
Right.
You know, there he was with the great. He was having proper blokes adventures. He was rescuing pilots from downed jets. He was rescuing men from flooded mines, and all the beautiful women in the blooming world wanted Mike to teach them to dive. You know?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be Mike Nelson.
I'm not surprised with all these women.
Exactly, all these beautiful women. They were just fantastic.
He was like the rock star of diving.
He was the rock star, and I was there 11. I knew nothing in life except I wanted to be a diver. I just failed me 11 plus, and I hated school. So you can imagine the freedom of what, you know, I was living in a council flat in Essex with my mum and dad, and I just wanted to escape, and the freedom and the possibilities that diving offered. I still remember that feeling.
So you were saying that you were in the States. When did you go to the States, and what did you go out there for?
What happened to me is I became a diver at, this was in 1969 when I became a diver. In the end, I went through the BSAC system, the Ilford British Subaquatic Club, and I still remember that first dive at Chesil Beach. There was at Chesil Cove up there, and with the homemade wetsuit, which was everybody did in those days. You bought the pattern. I think mine was a Merlin, and you cut it up, and I'd done a really bad job. But at least it was black with the yellow stripes. That's all I cared about.
Exactly.
I only wanted a la Cousteau. But I remember, having a lot of trouble with the seams and the glue, and walking over that pebbled beach. All the big lads were, carrying engines and the boats, and I was struggling to keep up with them. And finally getting in the water, and that sense of being underwater. Again, I can still feel. I can remember all that water rushing in the suit and going down on the pipe, at Chesil Cove, and crabs and the weed, and just the sense of freedom. I was alive in the world's oceans.
Was that the first place you dived?
First place I ever dived.
Right.
And that's the place I always go to.
Right.
And when people say about diving, and I talk about Antarctica or under the North Pole or any of these great tropical regions, if I'm asked about a favourite place, I always bring back my home at Chesil Cove. I feel that's my diving home. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
So then luckily, I was sort of rescued really by a geography teacher, because I started to dream about diving and motorbikes, which made me even worse at school, because then I had nothing in my head except diving and motorbikes.
Right.
And couldn't pass anything. And in those days, you could leave school if you passed something. And I managed to pass metalwork.
Okay.
And I only passed metalwork because while I was failing everything, our geography teacher took me and all my Herbert mates out to the Brecon Beacons, and we went walking. And we walked and we climbed and we ran down gullies and we experienced the wildness of nature. And it was that was the making me. Suddenly I could do it. I could do mathematics if I was talking about wind angles. I could do geography if I was looking at maps and fields. And I could figure out what was going on inside myself as potential if I was up against something physical. I couldn't experience any of them things in a book.
No.
I was in these blooming classrooms. I could still smell those overheated radiators in the classroom. I hated everything about it. So I managed to pass metalwork and leave. And because of my dad's work at Ford's at Dagenham, I managed to get an apprenticeship at Ford's at Dagenham. And I did a tool making apprenticeship. And that was where I learned about diving and climbing and sailing and all these old-fashioned apprenticeship schemes that had all these opportunities for sports.